Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I'm here today at the James D. Julia Auction House in Maine, taking a look at some of the cool guns they're going to have for sale up in their March of 2015 auction. There's one in here that is literally a one-of-a-kind gun, and it's a prototype automatic pistol, and it uses a rotating barrel assembly. So I clearly couldn't pass up the chance to take a look at this guy. This is a Bsa pistol. It's chambered in 45 ACP, and as I said, it's literally one of a kind. The backstory on this thing is that during World War I, BSA, or Birmingham Small Arms, virtually quadrupled in size. It was the biggest non-government-owned manufacturer of small arms in the UK, and it was doing a ton of business manufacturing all sorts of munitions for the British Army during the war. Of course, 1919 rolls around, the war has ended, and all of a sudden, this company that was heavily dependent on government contracts, obviously, doesn't have a whole lot of work left. So they scaled back. They went back to producing the sporting arms and even air rifles, actually, that they had been producing before the war. And one of the other projects that they tried to put together was development of a line of Bsa handguns. Now, this is one of three that still exist. This one, of course, is in 45. There were also a pair. There was one in 32 ACP and one in a very interesting 34 caliber cartridge. That 34 was one of a series of cartridges that was put together by BSA in collaboration with the Kynoch ammunition company. They did a series of handgun cartridges that were rimless and belted, so kind of unusual stuff. Now, that specialty ammunition ended up being a complete commercial flop. The problem basically was that it didn't offer any significant advantage over cartridges already existing. So BSA made a handful of guns. The 34, of course, was one of these interesting new belted rimless Kynoch cartridge guns. This 45 uses standard regular 45 ACP ammunition. There is almost nothing written about these guns even at the time. There were no patents filed on them. There's no internal company paperwork from BSA surviving about them, so there's not a whole lot that we know about these other than what you can tell by disassembling it and taking a look at the internals. The firing mechanism is very closely related to the FN Model 1910. FN didn't have a patent on that design in the UK, so it was possible for BSA to basically copy that design. Now, that would have been a problem had these actually been more successful and they tried to export them. Exporting them to countries where FN did have patents would have been tricky. At any rate, why don't I bring the camera back here and let's take a little bit of a closer look at this guy. There are some interesting and unusual design features to it that are worth checking out. So starting at the basics, this is a short recoil, rotating bolt operating system. This part of the design was copied very closely from the Steyr-Hahn, model 1911 or 1912. So as the slide recoils, you can see that the barrel rotates. That's what causes it to unlock and then cycle. The fire control lock work, as I mentioned, was largely copied from the FN model 1910. This does have a grip safety. It also has a magazine safety. It cannot be fired with the magazine removed. And it has a manual safety over on this side. Down is fire, up is safe. So if you're right-handed, this actually is not horrible. Not the worst safety design ever. The sights are a rather nice big notch. Not bad to use. The magazine holds 8 cartridges. As a practical matter, probably the worst element of this design is the magazine catch, which is really kind of difficult to use. You have to use 2 hands to do it. One to pull back the release and one to pull out the magazine. Have a rib on the back. They added a hold open tab on the back of the follower. So a little bit of an elegant design there. You've got your witness holes. Interesting that the bottom ones are ovaled out. Not entirely sure what would have caused that. I'm sure there's some interesting story to it. And of course the cutout here, which is where the magazine catch holds the magazine in the gun. The only little bit of disassembly I'm going to do on this is I can show you the mainspring, which is interesting. We push in this front barrel collar, rotate it 90 degrees, and it comes out, and then you can see that the mainspring is this rectangular flat spring. An interesting design, a fairly expensive design, but it's a good way to get a stiffer spring in a shorter area. place. It is standard 45 ACP that it uses. It does lock open. Oops. It locks open on an empty magazine when you have an empty magazine in it, like so. One of the other interesting elements here is that it actually uses the firing pin as the extractor. Right. Looking inside there, you can see that the firing pin is sticking out. That protrudes when the slide's about halfway open, and that's what punches the empty cases out. That's a fairly common design element in small caliber pistols, 32s and 25s, or even 22s in some case. It's pretty unusual to see that used in a locked breech large caliber pistol. Now, there is no slide release, so in order to drop the slide, I actually have to remove the magazine, which is a two-handed affair. The problem is there's a very tight spring in the mag release, and you have to pull it back while pulling down on the mag. So, there you have it. It's interesting to note the amount of effort that went into reducing weight on these pistols. You can see they've cut out areas on the back of the slide where material was unnecessary. They've actually, interestingly, relieved behind the trigger guard, which helps you get a little bit of a higher grip on the gun. That's kind of neat in that that's a custom feature you usually have to pay decent money on to get that on something like a 1911. It has a nice back strap here, so you're not going to get bitten by the slide. And it's actually a surprisingly slim pistol, almost to the point of, I wonder if it wouldn't be more comfortable to fire if the grips were a little bit wider on it. You know, it would be really interesting to get the chance to try shooting one of these, but that's not going to happen with this one. Perhaps whoever ends up purchasing this will be interested in taking it out to the range. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's not every day we get to take a look at a one-of-a-kind experimental 45 like this. If you'd like it to be your one-of-a-kind experimental 45, what you should do is click the link below in the description. That'll take you over to the James Julia catalog for this auction. This is lot number 2261. You can look it up by that number, check out their high-res pictures of it, their cataloger's description, and get all the information you need to either place a bid online or come down here in person to check it out and participate in the auction. Thanks for watching.